Well, hello, dear prayer partners and friends. This is Pastor Wolfgang from Christ the King Lutheran Church, and today I'm coming to you from my kitchen. Like everybody else in these days, I'm at home. Our county, Wake County here in North Carolina, today actually, is putting in place a stay-at-home order, and so people are only supposed to go out when they have critical need to do so, like food shopping, grocery shopping. And it's actually about shopping that I want to talk to you today, and about groceries. So I'm in my kitchen. Here is my pantry, and I'm putting together a little bag here of stuff that I can share, things that I want to give to our food drive right now, because at Christ the King, that's an important thing we are doing. Let me see, I have 3 of these, so I'll give one of those. It's an important thing we're doing right now, because we know that as people are getting laid off, as jobs are disappearing, North Carolina has more than 100,000 unemployment claims this week alone. As jobs disappearing, people are going to be hurting, and food pantries as a result are going to see a skyrocketing demand. And so for the past couple weeks already at Christ the King, we've been having this coronavirus emergency food collection. And we've invited people to stop by the church as they, are out and about. If they go grocery shopping, we're asking them to buy some extra things, and we just drop them off. There's a bin outside, so you don't have, the building's closed, of course, and so you don't have to come in, and it's quite safe to drive up to the outside bin and put the groceries in. And I'd have to say, let me see, I have some vegetables here, so I put some of those in. People have been incredibly responsive. Every day the bin just seems to be overflowing. We're using this food to help some families that we're working with, as we provide pastoral care. I've already given many bags to families that I work with, that I know. But then we also use most of the food to support the food pantries that we always support, so that they are able to feed many more people. This is one response, just one of many responses that our congregation, our church, is doing to this current crisis, this coronavirus crisis. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a historic perspective, I suppose. In 1527, in August, in the summer, the Black Plague came to Wittenberg. Of course, Martin Luther was living there. It had been 10 years since he began the Lutheran Reformation in Europe. And by then, just 10 years in, he was probably the most famous person in all of Germany and potentially all of Europe. People knew who he was. They had read some of his essays and writings. They sold like hotcakes because the printing press had just been invented, and so there was a new way, a technological way, to say things to the whole country. And that's what he did. And so people would look to him for guidance. They would ask him many questions. He got letters from all over the place. And in the summer of 1527, as the plague returned to Wittenberg, a lot of people were leaving town and fleeing, because that's what you do when a plague comes, right? And Luther was asked, was that okay? What was the responsibility of a Christian in a situation like that? And of course his answer was typical Luther, pushing the envelope and coming up with all kinds of new ideas. He wrote an essay called Whether One May Flee a Deadly Plague. And in it he really makes 3 essential points. His first point is, and this is the most important one, that serving the neighbor, being there for the neighbor, supporting the neighbor, helping the neighbor was even more important than it usually was. And that was the number 1 responsibility of a Christian. Number 2, that Christians needed to embrace science and medicine, so that, and that was kind of novel for the time at the end of the Middle Ages, right? That it was not just okay, but that it was imperative to use medications that were then available, and to follow the scientists of the day, right? And number 3, he said that the government had a responsibility to take care of its citizens, particularly its most vulnerable. Again, that was a kind of a new thing. I mean, at that point, there wasn't a social welfare system. It was basically the church that took care of the poor and the destitute. And so this idea that government should help take care of people, that was new thinking as well. So those are the three things he said. And of course, collecting food and feeding the neighbor, that's one of the responses here at Christ the King. We've stepped up to the plate. Food collection is one idea. We also have people at home while they're stuck at home sewing the masks that hospitals and healthcare providers need. We have a really nifty group called the Sewing Sisters, and we have a group, the Quilters, and they and others are busy making face masks that we then donate to the medical community. Thirdly, we are trying to take care of one another. We have a system in place. It's called Care Connect, where many of our volunteers are providing services to people, where we call people on the phone, where we check up on them. One neat thing is that some of our young adult members who recently became part of the church have stepped up and have stepped forward and have volunteered to be some of the folks who will actually go grocery shopping for you if you need that. You know, they are in a low-risk group, and if there's an elderly person who shouldn't leave the house, they'll go and pick up their groceries that the senior citizens have ordered, or even just take a list and pick out the stuff and deliver it to their house. So that's a kind of a new service that we have, and I'm very glad to see how members of Christ the King are really stepping up. This is also a time to provide really good pastoral care. Of course, that's always important. So Pastor Daniel and Pastor Athena and I are very, very busy keeping in touch with people. It's a little strange, you know. As pastors, of course, our instinct is, as soon as we hear that somebody is sick or somebody needs help or somebody needs someone to pray with, our instinct is to run off and to visit, to make a home visit, to run off to the hospital, to sit next to the bedside and pray with people, to bring Holy Communion to people who are stuck in their home. And of course, we can't do any of that. We can't do any of that. And so we stay in touch through the telephone. We can pray with people on the telephone. We stay in touch with email and text messages and all these other technological things. And maybe that's another point that Luther didn't make in his little essay, but that is so clear now. I mean, the Reformation was possible because it used the new technology of the printing press. And in that same way, I think the church is now called in this day and age to use the new technologies of the internet, of social media, to stay in touch, not just with the church, but with the community, and to help build community, even electronically, even virtually where we can't do it in person. So I'm going to finish my task here. I'm going to have to hurry up before my wife catches me and sees all the stuff that I'm going to give away. And then I'm going to run out and buy some more things and drop some of that at church. And I hope that you will do that too. I would encourage you to help us with this food collection because it's so needed. And then, of course, join us virtually for our worship services. We live stream 3 times a week at 8:30 and 11 on Sunday mornings. You know, those are our regular worship times, and we are live on YouTube at those times. And then on Wednesday night for our midweek Lenten services, we live stream at 6:30. And I hope that you will join us for those and keep connected with us and with one another. I pray that God will bless you in this unprecedented and difficult time, and that God will help you to be neighbor to one another as Jesus calls us to be. God bless you always. Take care.